Spoilers. So this week in Spoiler Zone, I'm going to be covering Fright Night, which I saw in 3D. I'm also going to be looking at an independent film that a fan sent to me. It's called Stuck Like Chuck. Let's begin with Fright Night. Yeah, I gave the movie 2 out of 4 stars, and most of the things I did not like about it, I actually was able to cover spoiler-free. I felt the characters were horrible, like freaking bad. Charlie is like the worst character I've seen as a lead character protagonist in maybe any movie ever at all. He has no thoughts of the future. He's in high school, doesn't talk about graduating. The most important thing about high school is actually roll call. He goes there all of twice, has no rapport with the teachers. It's just awful to imagine this, because any movie with a high school character needs to acknowledge the fact that school exists, really. Like, I'm just blown away by this, to be honest with you. He has a girlfriend he hasn't earned, that's for certain. And it's strange, like, you got a guy living next door who's a vampire, right? Even if he's not a vampire, and the guy blows up your house, which is what happens here. It doesn't matter if he's a vampire. You don't have to point out that there's his claws coming out of the car, digging through of it. I told you he's a vampire. Well, you know what? He just blew up your house. We don't like him already. Vampire or not, Charlie. The 3D effects, they're really quite scattershot. The embers from whenever a vampire dies, cool. Okay, it reminds me of the particle effects I saw at the beginning of Avatar, which is what a lot of people are being introduced to 3D on, is Avatar. Aside from that, it's strange. A lot of shots, 85% of the film looks like it was not shot in 3D. I'll tell you that much. And some shots draw a lot of attention to the 3D unnecessarily. Hey, I picked up a cross. 3D shot this. It's just weird. Like, weird things are happening in this movie. You got this St. Michael's cross thing that will revert all the vampires back to normal, which is a real Disney sort of cop-out, almost like saying, hey, we got a movie with dragons, and all the dragons die if you kill the lead dragon. All the vampires become normal. Everything's good again once you kill the lead vampire. I don't really buy that. It doesn't make a lot of sense, really. How could they really be connected in that sort of way? But even if you don't think about that, these vampires are super allergic to sunlight. Okay? You put them out in the day and they explode instantly. We saw it, like the stripper chick he rescued. There's a part where Jerry is standing right by Charlie, ranting on like a Bond villain, and Charlie can easily stab him at this point. He's asking for it, but instead he does something stupid, catches himself on fire so he can catch Jerry on fire, which in turn makes for a stickier yet more dramatic situation so we can show off more special effects. Instead of doing the plausible thing and stabbing him when he's an inch away from you and you're protected by the sunlight. So yeah, real stupid. I went and saw the movie instead of Conan because Conan, it looked to me like Fright Night was going to be the lead. I thought it was going to be the top gross of the weekend, and amazingly I was wrong, and this really only happens about once a year. It had a better trailer than Conan, a far better trailer. Conan, it's introducing America to Jason Momoa, and yeah, I'll say this, most people don't know who the heck he is. They didn't watch Stargate, whatever the heck he's on now, or, I mean, actually, I saw him in North Shore, if you want to go back, where he's a skinny surfer. I think he looks, body-wise, like Conan, face, not really. But you don't win an audience over by not having the guy no one's ever heard of introduce himself in the trailer. I get that you don't have a big name above the credits, above the title, but to give the lead guy almost no role in the trailer doesn't say much. You know, if I'm someone and I'm like, hey, what's this Conan stuff? Who is this guy they got to play Conan? Well, he's not showing me much in the trailer. I guess I won't see the movie. You have to sell the fact that this is your new star, and the trailer doesn't do that. Instead, it pushes rock music down your throat. Rock music out of place in a medieval fantasy-style world just never works. And people have told me after I said that 300 does that. 300 has a score that sounds, it borrows rock themes in the score, but it doesn't just blatantly play rock music in the promotional material. I think there's a little bit of a difference there. So I felt that like this setup never works. This rock music out of place when, diegetically speaking, none of the characters in the world of Conan the Barbarian can play rock. So it's just a mess. Moving along, I'm going to look at Stuck Like Chuck, which is by a guy who I think is a fan of mine, or at least he said, hey, I want the world's toughest movie critic to watch my video. And yeah, you're going to get that. It's not good. Some of your jokes are better than jokes I've seen in film festival entries, but your production quality is pretty poor. It's rather boringly shot. The editing is a little slow. There's not a lot of shot selection. So you're stuck with a bunch of medium shots throughout the whole movie, to be honest. That's what this boils down to. It's not particularly interesting for a long while, and I would have stopped watching it after 20 minutes, to be honest. But once this guy Chuck, who is a film festival kid, or rather he's a aspiring filmmaker in a class, and there's a hot girl in his class whom he likes. Him and his really rude roommate come up with a plan to get them together. And what that calls for is getting them stuck in the classroom overnight. That part was actually pretty interesting, because as boring as the movie is as far as the composition of it and the overall production, at least the acting isn't bad, and the acting is fairly believable, to be honest. And just to have the actors go through the lines from a regular seated position or whatever is fairly interesting, all things considering. When you're working with a movie this cheap, the Lloyd Kaufman cameo doesn't do much for me. He makes bad movies. Putting him in your bad movie, it's like, hey, we're just combining our forces to make a bad movie. I made a bad movie. You want to be in my bad movie? You make bad movies. Let's make a bad movie together. And people seem to like this. I see it happen quite a bit. Apparently, Lloyd will be in any movie if you ask him. Or maybe he's hurting for money and will work for peanuts. I don't know what the case is, but maybe he feels like he's helping aspiring filmmakers when, in fact, he's done more damage to the filmmaking industry than anybody I can think of. Here's what happened, and I'm going to do my little psych-analysis over here on director Jerry. I'm guessing you like bad movies. And that's the problem with a lot of kids making movies these days, is that they watch the trauma films and they're watching like all these B slashers and stuff, and they think this stuff's good, and it's not. And they teach themselves how to make other schlock, other completely worthless junk with bad special effects and poor lighting and everything, and no real ingenuity. And this is what happens. People watch bad stuff and they make more bad stuff. People are fans of bad things and they aspire to make more garbage. That's what's happening to the filmmaking culture right now. There's such an overload of bad movies out there that didn't get in theaters, but people were able to discover them at home on VHS, late night cable, whatever. And somehow they found an audience, and that audience went and said, hey, you know what? I can do this too. And I guess you can, but should you? No. Jerry, realistically, you seem to understand that no one's going to put this in theaters, that you're not going to make money from your movie. I mean, unless you made it for free or something. But the labor, you don't pay yourself for a cost for working on it. It's obvious you don't have a lot of help with the crew. But Making movies is a rich man's game. Okay, you can go out and paint real good, cheaply. You can afford to do that. Making movies requires a lot of other people's time. And when people all around you have jobs, like where I live, that's why I do everything on my own. That's why my stuff doesn't look the way I want it to, but it still comes out okay, serviceable for an internet audience. And your movie is very much the channel awesome crap or that guy with the glasses look. If you're into that kind of garbage, then this is for you. It looks very similar to that. It looks very ready for the internet. Though I do have to give you a little bit of props for getting Chris Elliott on board. I suppose that when it comes to something you watch on the internet, the two things that really drive it is humor and hot chicks. You have some humor, you got a pretty good looking girl involved, so you can retain some interest for this. Your primary goal should be to build up a fan base around what you've made, but don't expect to make any money. A lot of people seem to think you make money on your first movie. You don't. If you look at Clerks, okay, you got Kevin Smith throughout this movie, really. Kevin Smith has no talent. I'm sorry to break that to you, being your hero, I assume. He got lucky in 1994 because the market wasn't oversaturated, okay? He maxed out a lot of credit cards, spent a lot more money on his movie than you did yours, and yeah, that'll get people's attention back then, but now everybody's looking at Clerks trying to make Clerks, and it doesn't work. People have done this 1,000 times in this country alone this year, and already did better than you probably 99% of the time. Sorry to break that to you. You got to do something more original. But at least you don't have the illusion that you're going to make money on this. You have to wow a crowd with what you can do on your own, and then hope that a studio sees it and says, hey, we want to pay you to direct your next movie for us, you know? We want you to work on something later. Later is where you make the money. Okay, this is like a proof of concept kind of thing here. You prove that you can direct, and then they let you direct. I don't think you really proved it, but, you know, who am I to really say this? I'm just a guy who lives in my parents' basement, does almost nothing with my life, and a few people watch me on the internet. And that's all I got to say about that.